Salam, my name is Ramala Hubb'Allah, and what you're looking at around me is the model that I call the Salaam Matrix. It was initially called the People-Centered Model of Business. You'll see in a minute why. That was never an appropriate name. I was looking for a name when I developed this first. In 2005 and 2006, over a period of time, it came about very accidentally, and I'll tell you more about it. Let me pinch myself down to a smaller size first so you can see the model. All right, now that I'm mostly out of your way, you can see that this is a model in which we center people, center human beings, and then we show what I call the life roles that they play. Now, this is by no means an exhaustive list of life roles. These are just samples or little selection of life roles. By the way, this diagram has been picked up from a Pakistani magazine where it was officially first published. Before that, I published a PDF on my own, self-published it, and you can on this website, the salaammatrix.org, if you are on that website. If not, then you jump to that website, the SALAAM matrix.org and also .com, and you can go to the learn section that is available there at this moment. And if you're seeing this video at a later time when the navigation changes, then you can look around for it, and you might find a copy. And for right now, you will find a copy of the original paper in the PDF format that I wrote back in 2005 and 6. I started developing the model in 2005. It wasn't a model back then. It was just a spontaneous diagram. And it turned into a full model by 2006 when I turned that into a paper called the People-Centered Model of Business. Centering was not a word that was common at the time. It might have been somewhere in the dictionary. Otherwise, this model centers people. So it is a people-centering model of business. And at first, it was a model of business, like socio-economic zone. But then, right back then, I said it's a model of busyness. Busyness, the things that people do round the clock, round the years, round seasons in their daily life, the roles that they play, the things that they do, the actions that they do in terms of whether you can, or in as far as those can be atomized and quantified and looked at. This exactly is what they're doing. So we're not talking about something etheric or amorphous, which cannot be quantified and looked into. So we are looking at what can be iconized, or what can be picked up, or what can be atomized, or what can be identified as a life role or activity. That is what they're doing. That is one of the limitations of the model. So there might be certain things that it excludes. We cannot monitor people's thoughts or things that somehow cannot be looked at. Though there are ways of looking at things that cannot be looked at by ordinary people, ordinary eyes, or ordinary professionals. There are ways of quantifying your maybe even thoughts. Right, so there are certain disciplines that do that, but we will not get into that. So what I initially did was that I started mapping out the roles that people play, and I was talking to business students at that time, and I said, well, there's a story on my website and in my paper that you'll see. I was saying, who do we do business for? And they gave me random ideas, and they said money. Now, at that time, I was like kind of excessively no to the idea of money, even though I was teaching them money and I was teaching them earning. So maybe it was a little bit not so much focused on money as I should be, because in business you do work for money, and if you're doing some other thing in which you're achieving certain objectives and perhaps are not working only for money, or you're doing something like, for example, securing people's votes, or getting them to do some community activity which does not really as such involve money, you're still taking some objectives. You have some objective. You have money as an objective. You have voter sign up as an objective. You have, I'm going to get 50 people to volunteer to do this, and I'm going to, maybe get certain hours of service from people, or provide hours of service to them. And there's an economic to it, which I'm not going to get into. But there is something quantifiable that you're doing. The thing that I wanted to do, however, was that I didn't want them to focus on just earning money, but rather tether the earning of money and doing of business to something that people needed. Because what was happening at the time, the problem that I was dealing with was that people, particularly MBAs, develop products without looking at markets. Like, what do people do? What do people need? What do people want? They don't even know how to look at people. So they would develop something that people probably sometimes do not need. So this is an empathetic model. It got my students at that time to look at people And then I started refining it. I realized, well, you know what? We can divide these life roles that I had identified into kind of four zones. I identified those as the spiritual zone, which is really at the top, and then personal familial zone, which in this model is like to the right, and then socio-economic zone at the bottom, and then ecological political zone, which I think was very smart at that time because I started identifying them as citizens. Um, and to my business students, I was teaching like, look, these are the roles that you play, that people play, and they need services, etc., in all these departments. Spiritual, we can probably leave out because there are services that you can provide in order to even serve their spiritual needs, like prayer rugs or rosaries or whatever. These also are products that require economics. Or you can develop products which in themselves are, or services which in themselves are of a spiritual nature, intangible, and then you can you need delivery vehicles for that, at least in this day and age. So it's not something that just is organic, spontaneous, or miraculous. You need to think about how to approach people, how to offer your service, what is your messaging, and you can get this from absolute divine inspiration, or some kind of shamanic wisdom, or you can think about it like, how do I approach people? In the era that we are living in, we are more intentional and deliberate. Like, you can think about, oh, I want to get my message across to people. There are prophets who have actually invited people on for food and then said, well, I'm the prophet now. I'm God's prophet who's aligned with me. This is what the Prophet of Islam did, at least. So Salaam Matrix was named the people-centered, or I should have called it people-centered model of business. What I wanted my students to do was to look at, really consider people, really consider human beings, who they were serving. And this still makes a very good model of really looking at population, not just looking at people who we want to serve, but we can even be the people who want to be served and then start looking at our own needs. So you can work with this model in various ways. You can render this model in the light of various questions, like, what are the roles that we are playing now? What are the roles that we want to play in 2030 or by 2050? What is it which is obsolete now? So you can make this diagram featuring only obsolete roles, or roles that are expanding in the next 30 years, like a projected model, or something that has all of these three, but then you explain, you give an explanation of the model, like, what exactly is this rendering of the model showing? So this is a static template, and then you can start adding kind of renderings to it. There is modification I want to bring to this model. This was written for Pakistani Muslim audience. There's a spiritual zone, actually shows a Muslim icon. I want to do a more neutral or secular version of it, or maybe versions of it that suit people of different faiths. So maybe we can probably, going forward, develop like templates that suit different culture, or invite people to make their own templates, like how people translate a document into their own language. So we can say that actually even the identification of what goes into the spiritual zone is an exercise in itself, like how many spiritual beliefs or rules or whatever it is, whatever are there. So the iconography of this thing in itself is an exercise in itself, and this is a very generative model. What the Salaam Matrix does is that it provides a template which keeps on generating its own uses and applications. And what I mean to do with this is to literally seed an economy, like seed ideas. The good thing about this thing is that it's a very earthing, very grounding model, which makes you focus your attention. And the way you can render these life roles is that you can take out things that you don't want to focus on. As you would see that the rules, etc., that I have identified are very earthen, are focused on families, are focused on people's socio-economic needs. There are a lot of people, citizens in the world right now, who are saying our elites, our governments and decision makers and corporations are not focusing on our real, practical, everyday needs. They're focused on celebrity culture, they focus on wheeling and dealing, they focus on wars. You can see I don't have wars here, but we do have ecological political zone in which we're talking about eco-consciousness, patriots, defense workers, law-abiding citizen, animal lover, etc. People who really, they're the salt of the earth. So this is a model that can be used in many ways, and I want you to explore the website, explore the model wherever you find it, look around in the learning section. I will be sharing more videos on my website. I want you to dig in. For now, I'm taking your leave. Thank you for being with me. Thank